Hello everyone, and welcome to the 2021 presidential debate as part of the Iowa State student government elections. My name is Ross Opie. I'm the election commissioner for student government. Moderating alongside me tonight is Jake Tubbs from the Iowa State Daily. Due to the university's COVID restrictions, this debate's in-person attendance has been limited to both campaign teams, the election commission members, and Memorial Union event staff. We would like to thank both the Campbell-Decker and the Olson-Gonzalez campaign, as well as the entire Election Commission and Iowa State Daily for their preparation leading up to tonight's event. The debate structure will be the same as last week and will be as follows. Each candidate will have the opportunity to give an opening statement. We will then have topical questions for both candidates to answer, and we will then go into specific questions for each candidate's platform. At that point, we'll take a 5-minute break, and when we resume, we'll be asking questions that have been submitted by the student body. For those watching at home, the link to your questions is on the EC Debate webpage. It is also in the YouTube description, and that will take you to the question form to submit questions. At the end of the debate, each candidate will have time to make a closing statement, and that will wrap up our event. So we will now go into opening statements. The candidates will each have 90 seconds to introduce themselves and tell the constituents a little bit about themselves and why they want to be your next student body president, starting with Ms. Campbell.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Julia Campbell. I use she, her pronouns. It is an honor to be here tonight, and I'd like to take the time to thank the Election Commission, the Iowa State Daily, and to everyone tuning in this evening for a great discussion focused on student interests and student life at Iowa State University. I am a junior in agricultural business and economics from DeWitt, Iowa, and I have been heavily involved at both a college and university level over the past 3 years. Serving as a peer mentor for the Department of Economics, a group fitness instructor teaching bar, Pilates, and aqua agility, and a student employee in the Career Services Office. Currently, I serve as our Director of Affordability for Student Government, where over the past year I've had the chance to interact with the Office of Student Financial Success, the Office of Financial Aid, the state legislature, and our Legislative Ambassadors Group, a student-led lobbying effort focused on bringing light to issues such as the COVID-19 pandemic, college affordability, mental health, and safety and sexual assault on college campuses. I look forward to an awesome discussion this evening focused on our platform, as well as bringing light to issues that you'd like to answer or have us answer as candidates this evening. Thank you.
Ms. Olson.
Hi everyone, my name is Anna Olson. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. Over the last few months, we've talked to over 3 dozen clubs, Mariana and I, in order to figure out our platform points for serving cyclones, which is diversity and inclusion, sustainability and affordability, and mental and physical health. Throughout my time at Iowa State University, I've been able to serve in the role as Senior Director of Communications. I've also had the opportunity to be an honors student, ISU Daily reporter, First Amendment Club member, ISU Rec Center employee, Residence Hall president, Food at First volunteer. I've internshiped at a nonprofit in Ames, along with being a STAR representative. A few things that I've done in those roles is I've put on the Women's Week Conference, the Social Justice Forum, worked with local and state politicians, and much, much more. But what I'm here for tonight is to talk about change. Change needs to happen. And I believe that both Mariana Gonzalez and I can make that change happen if we work with all of you. And that is why we are here today to serve cyclones.
Thank you. We'll now move into topical questions. And you will have 60 seconds each to answer these questions. Our first topic is one that has been at the forefront of many discussions recently, and that is the statement released by President Fritz and Vice President Schrader. For those unaware, on Wednesday, March 10th, the current student government president, Morgan Fritz, and Vice President Jacob Schrader issued a statement regarding the tweets of a women's and gender assistant teaching professor that was speaking at the Women's Week Diversity and Inclusion event sponsored by student government. The statement criticized the professor's personal tweets for, quote, containing disparaging comments about people on the basis of their race, and stated the reasoning for keeping the professor on the panel was to ensure the protection of her right to free speech. Do you believe that this statement correctly characterizes the nature of the professor's tweets? And as a follow-up, did this issue warrant a statement from the president and vice president of the student body? Starting with Ms. Olson.
Thank you so much for that question. For me, this is something that I personally dealt with and I advised against from the beginning. Being the Senior Director of Communications and putting on the Women's Week Conference, I advised both the student body president and vice president that this statement is not something that student government and anyone within student government roles should be taking. For me, Dr. Mukherjee's experiences are all of her own. She is a BIPOC woman on a predominantly white campus here at Iowa State University, and all of her opinions and ideas about things that are occurring to her on campus are valid and they are her own. But I wanted to make sure that I do not condone this statement. I do not agree with this statement because I want to make sure that all students have their First Amendment rights distributed to them equally, whether it's students, faculty, or staff.
Ms. Campbell.
The statement released last week was an incredibly painful statement that affected many individuals in our Iowa State community. With that being said, following last week's events, I reached out to members that I value their mentorship and have more expertise and experience in this area than I do. Following conversations with a trusted mentor, Dr. Evie Lubaga, a member of the Department of Economics, Dr. Toya Younger, as well as many members both on our campaign team and within the student body, I would not have released the statement given last week and do not believe that the tweets should have resulted in an escalation to the point of a statement being released, considering the intended or the damage done to some of the students on campus.
Do you guys believe that the professor should have been removed from the respective Student Government Women's Week Diversity and Inclusion panel, starting with Ms. Campbell?
I do not believe that the professor should have been removed from the panel. I think that they went ahead and with a perspective fostering, welcoming perspectives from a diverse array of backgrounds. This is incredibly important. I think being able to hear and understand and continuing to seek perspective, I am glad that they made the decision to keep the professor on the panel, and I'm happy that they did so.
Ms. Olson?
Yes, personally, I advocated for the professor to be still on the panel myself. I reached out to our First Amendment specialist on campus in order to ensure that this professor would continue her role on the panel. I thought that the conversation went very well for the Diversity and Inclusion panel, so I'm very happy that I was able to advocate along with fellow cabinet members in order to ensure that she stayed on this panel.
The publication of this statement by the President and Vice President went against the advice of multiple current cabinet officials, as we've said, including the Student Government Director of Diversity and Inclusion. In the future, if you are placed in a similar situation, how would you proceed in the event that your cabinet members don't agree with your plan of action? Ms. Campbell.
These are difficult decisions, and as we move forward, there will never be a lack of difficult decisions. It's not a matter of if they happen, it's a matter of when. Bringing a diverse array of perspectives into those areas that we are considering the information, evaluating what we know about a current situation, it is incredibly, incredibly important to seek perspective from a wide variety of backgrounds. Where I do believe maybe something fell short was not only listening to those perspectives, but seeking to implement that into the decision. Going forward, action to be set in place to make sure that we continue to implement the decisions or the advice that's being given from a diverse array of perspectives is incredibly important, and that is something our administration would seek to do.
Ms. Olson, same question to you.
Yes, under our administration, we would make sure to go through all of the proper individuals in order to formally educate ourselves on all of these decisions. Much like the Senate meeting that both Mariana and I were in attendance at on Wednesday, we learned a lot from the MGC individuals and CPC members that were in attendance there, and their stories really spoke to both Mariana and I, and it was a really awesome perspective to have, to be there and to listen to how hurtful the actions that were made by student government impacted these students. So it's very important for Mariana and I to both continue listening to those stories from those groups and also other multicultural groups on campus, also listening to individuals like Toya Younger, the First Amendment specialist, and many other individuals on this campus and administrators for advice.
At the March 10th Student Government Senate meeting, many students expressed that reverse racism is a myth. The cumulative body of research on this topic has indicated that this statement is indeed true. According to the Alberta Civil Liberties Research Center, quote, while assumptions and stereotypes about white people do exist, this is considered racial prejudice, not racism. Racial prejudice refers to a set of discriminatory and derogatory attitudes based on assumptions derived from perceptions about race and/or skin color. Thus, racial prejudice can indeed be directed at white people. However, it is not considered racism because of the systematic relationship to power. When backed with power, prejudice results in acts of discrimination and oppression against groups or individuals, end quote. Do you believe it is important to distinguish between prejudice and racism and to not to conflate one with the other? Why or not? Why not? Starting with Ms. Campbell.
That is a distinction, and our campaign administration, we've released a statement discussing the difference between the two, a discrimination versus a racism. And with that being said, the historical oppression of people of color and minority groups is far more extensive than that of people of a white race. With that being said, the distinction to be made going forward is that we truly want to seek to uplift and continue to bring in perspectives from all across the university and continue to uplift and bring those perspectives forward for them to best and be included in every discussion we have and every decision-making model.
Ms. Olson?
Yes, I do believe that there should be a distinction made between the two things that you are mentioning, because it is very important for students to be educated on this. But furthermore, student government should be educated on this before going into those roles. They should know that they need to continually educate themselves by being around individuals that can teach them about these things, and then also immersing themselves into practices in which will consume their education around those lines. So I've continually worked with individuals on cabinet and outside of cabinet in order to educate myself in these areas, but there's still a lot to go, and I obviously we've all seen that on student government. So in order to properly distinguish that, everyone needs to have the mindset of going in with education, and I believe that student government has some awesome individuals that can also work on that, and then also we can do that on our own through taking diversity and inclusion classes and so on at the university.
On November 7th, a current member of student government issued a statement from a student organization's Twitter page, which was encouraging that, quote, "Everyone, you must arm up." President Fritz and Vice President Schrader chose not to release a statement in regards to this event. Members of the student body and student government drew clear parallels between this event and the Women's Week panelist, questioning the reasonings behind action in one scenario and silence in another. Do you believe that this is a double standard in the current executive branch's response to controversies that arise, and what should be done to improve response, if anything? Ms. Wilson.
Thank you for that question. I brought this same topic up within our discussions with the student body president and vice president, along with the director of outreach and the director of diversity and inclusion. I think it is very important for our First Amendment rights to be distributed to everyone equally, and it's not fair to be distributed to individuals that are just BIPOC. And we obviously saw that in this instance. And so we have to make sure that everyone on our campus is ensuring that they know their rights and go through Know Their Rights campaigns in order to make sure that they know how the First Amendment can be applied equally to everyone on this campus.
Ms. Campbell.
Absolutely. As we reflect on recent events in student government, I believe it is important for us to state that it is not, we do not have the ability to pick and choose what events we respond to. Going forward and understanding, knowing our rights, but also knowing the limitations of the First Amendment, following some of what's going on currently in the state legislature, where there's discussion of having faculty and staff have First Amendment training, we would like to extend this First Amendment training to have it as a requirement for student government members to be involved in First Amendment training, to know, number one, the protections it has, but also the limitations of that amendment. And that would be also open to anyone at the student body.
Thank you for that. Our next topic of discussion will be centering around student government renewal. For our first question, it is, at the start of this year, there were 34 sitting senators. As of last week, there were 26. What does that say about the functionality and inclusivity of student government, and how would you go about creating a solution to this problem? Starting with Ms. Olson.
Yes, thank you for that question. Actually, this year, both the Director of Outreach and I released a survey out to senators within student government in order to see what area they are coming from. So what clubs and organizations we were able to reach out to in order to see how many students are coming from those areas. We will continue doing that to make sure that we keep hitting those clubs and organizations, but then also to see where we're lacking in student government and what voices we are getting. So it's very important to me that we continue those initiatives, but then also we need to recontinue the passion that is in Senate. The reason why we need to do that is because sometimes you're sitting in a room for long periods of time and you're debating over policy and you don't realize what that policy is about. It's about the students, and we have to make sure that senators always know that, because that's where the passion comes from, and that's the real reason why I think all of the senators run.
Ms. Campbell?
Culture is everything in an environment. Wherever we are and wherever we're at, the culture and how we feel, whether we feel included, respected, a valued member of that environment, is critically important. We understand that the Senate is currently not at a space where that culture is where we want it to be. As we reflect and move forward after many of the information that we've known about the pandemic, we want to continue to improve that culture, and a few things to do so. Number one, being to encourage a senator and student government interaction outside of hosted meetings. We want people to establish personal relationships and also develop that trust that is so essential for personal relationships in a working environment. So encouraging senator interaction outside, as well as, if elected, Megan and I would set up meetings with every senator and member of student government to understand what excites them, why are they happy to be here, how are they excited to go exhibit positive change on the students and represent their constituencies.
In the past, when policy concerns have been raised from members of the student body and other branches of student government, it is not uncommon that most concerns go unanswered and are not addressed. How will you ensure that concerns are properly addressed and be a proper facilitator in producing dialogue and creating solutions? Ms. Campbell.
When we step into a leadership role and when we step into an organization, I was told by a mentor in an earlier internship that it's a three-step process. Number one, we step into a role and we understand the processes and the people in that setting. Secondly, we begin to do the work. Every single day we show up, we're here to move actionable items forward. And finally, as we reflect, that third step is the process of bringing positive energy and infusing change and energy into those processes. With that being said, continuing to assess and analyze the current situation is something that, as we continue to listen, going out into and having meetings where we're out and about in the college as an extension of where we're at, and making it a more inviting and accessible space for students, we want to continue to bring those concerns to light and help assess how we can improve them beyond where they're at.
Ms. Olson.
After talking to the International Student Council, I learned a lot about how different groups on campus are viewing student government and the things that we are trying to initiate for them. It is very evident to me that student government has not always paid attention to multicultural groups and also groups on campus everywhere. To me, it's very important that we continue having these conversations with all of these groups in order to make sure that all the voices are heard. How are we going to hear about anyone having any problems with policy if we don't actually talk to them? And that's something that I've noticed within student government, is making sure that we continually talk to these groups, because we can do action plans, we can talk to have people come to open forum, we can have people do all of these things, but having them seek us out is not always the best option. We have to seek out the students in which we're trying to really represent.
Student government has been accused of being an echo chamber where the voice of the same few individuals dominates and other members are unable to properly discuss their concerns and seek resolutions. How will you ensure that the culture within student government allows for rigorous debate and the development of new ideas? Starting with Ms. Campbell.
In an environment that people feel that they are they are respected, it starts with those foundational, personable relationships. In any situation, building trust and becoming a place where people want to be. We want student government to be a spot where people show up to meetings because they enjoy being here, or they tune in because there's discussion about things they're extremely passionate about. But in order to have any of that productive conversation where action is moved forward beyond that, we need to have that trust established where personal relationships, people feel that no matter what they put out there, there's going to be that support net that connects them, because that begins with conversations beyond just what's taking place around business, but extends to that where we're interacting. And one thing that we would be really excited to do is have students commingle. Each Senate meeting set by a different senator until you've met every single person in the room. Encourage that development of friendships.
Ms. Olson?
After going to the Senate meeting on Wednesday, an individual came up to me and said that she wanted to join student government her freshman year, but that she didn't feel like she could because the conversations that are had in student government are too exhausting, and it's very hard to sit in a room where no one understands you. That broke my heart because I've had the goal of running for positions ever since I was young, and I've never had a restriction not to, honestly. I'm able to stand up here pretty easily, and I'm very fortunate for that, but not many students are like that. For me, it's very important to continue having those conversations, and like Campbell said, have a very inclusive environment in order to have everyone come to these meetings. I've done this by meeting with many senatorial candidates over the last few months, and even in my role as Senior Director of Communications, and I will continue doing that as your president, and will continue having those open conversations within Senate and outside.
That leads into our next question. Members of student government have stated that there has been a great loss of trust and respect between one another in the three government branches. How do you repair these broken relationships and build back trust that has been severely depleted? Starting with Ms. Campbell.
When we look back to what the pandemic brought us a year ago, I had just joined student government and came onto a role. Our retreat was virtual, and that was a place where it wasn't it was an extremely conducive environment to meeting people. And I think that going back to some of those personal relationships, as we seek to build trust within one another, we want to encourage those people not only to continue to engage in conversations within ourselves and learn more about each other, but continue to learn more about and expand upon the energy they had when they began in a role, expand upon the energy they had when they initially ran, and take those interests and continue to be a lifelong learner, continue to immerse themselves in situations that they feel uncomfortable in, and as they feel better and have a better understanding of the current Iowa State community, they can feel like they have those trusted relationships and helping improve it.
Ms. Olson.
Can you repeat the question one time, please?
Members of student government have stated that there has been a great loss of trust and respect between one another in the three government branches. How do you repair these broken relationships and build back that trust?
I believe that outreach is really the main goal that we need to work on there. Outreach is so important in order to get everyone involved in student government. Throughout my role as Senior Director of Communications, I've been able to outreach to many different senators. I would send them emails and have conversations, work with them on anything from diversity and inclusion one-pagers to putting on Destination Iowa State with them. It's very important to constantly encourage senators to be involved in these things, and then also just having the conversation of trying to get them involved creates that bridge of communication between student government and Senate, cabinet, and so on throughout the entire campus. So I think that outreach is really important, and by continuing to put on different events and different things, you're able to get to know your senators and your cabinet members and everyone in student government.
Thank you. The student government budget in 2021 was $2.6 million. And it originates from student activity fees, a fee that every student pays as part of their U-bill. With declining enrollment rates, how much of a concern is keeping a balanced budget, and how do you plan on dealing with a decreased budget? Starting with Ms. Campbell.
$2.6 million is a lot of money, and that's something that not only are we wanting to ensure that that money is going back into a student population where it's impacting positive change and allowing student organizations to exhibit and put on different events that their members extremely resonate with, but we want to ensure that there is an equitable distribution of those funds. As we see a student declining enrollment rate, and we're not even to 2026 when there's what they are calling the enrollment cliff, where we're looking to see an even further decreased number of students on college campuses. This is something that not only are we going to have to find the inefficiencies currently within student government and make those plugs within the budget and spending, but also we want to continually assess how we are spending our funds and whether it's a strong use of those student dollars that ultimately go back and impact the students, because that's why we're here.
Ms. Olson?
Just like was mentioned, obviously, the individuals that are enrolling in college is starting to steadily decrease. It's very important that we look at this in student government and make sure that we look in the areas in which might not be used, or certain events that might not be needed to be funded for certain things, and make sure that we look at that gap there in order to make sure that we are assessing students' financial needs. For me, I think it's really important that we make sure that we look at our multicultural student groups and make sure that we aren't cutting funds from the same groups over and over, because it is very important that we look at those and continue to make sure that we are not cutting from the same groups, and then look at the areas in which we can do cutbacks on if it is needed. But it's very important to have an equal distribution between all clubs, and so that is very important within this next coming year.
As a follow-up, are there any specific areas that you would cut first?
For me, I wouldn't say that there's any specific areas. We would definitely work with our finance director in order to make sure that we are properly assessing these situations, to make sure that we are looking at what areas needed funded or not. Under the PR committee this year, we were able to spend less than $1,000 on a conference that included quite a few people. So it's making sure that we can look at the best ways of using money, and also reaching out to outside sources like we did for the Women's Week conference in order to help fund those things.
Ms. Campbell, if you'd like to add anything.
Recently, within the Student Government Senate, it was a really cool procedure to see that our legislative relations budget in student government has seen incredibly large amounts of money. And as we look forward, that was something that people were assessing, saying, hey, this isn't a strong use of our funds if they're not getting utilized to their full extent. Potentially, we can reallocate some of those funds so there's a better utilization. That is what we want to continue doing, is that continual reassessment of how our money is being used. Another example of this, I've served on the Committee on Lectures at Iowa State University, where they bring in some incredibly wonderful speakers from all walks of life that share so much wisdom with our students. With that being said, they saw a contract cut within that, but that was something on a mutual side. There was understanding that this is a time for us to move forward. There was, and with strongholds there, those are the types of mutual agreements and conversations that go over, and there's understanding on both sides if we do have to make those cuts in the future.
We will now move on to our next topic of discussion surrounding the Iowa legislature. You will have 60 seconds to answer each question. Last month, the presidents of Iowa's 3 regent universities pitched their proposal to state legislatures for $642 million in state funding for the fiscal year of 2022, an increase of $18 million from what was allocated in the last fiscal year. Iowa State cited a $49 million loss due to the pandemic as one of the reasons why an increase in state funding is needed. However, Governor Kim Reynolds' recent budget proposal only allocates $15 million in additional funding from last fiscal year. How will your administration lobby state legislators to increase funding to meet the proposal requested by the Board of Regents? Ms. Olson.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. Obviously, affordability for students is very, very important on this campus, and Mariana and I are both very committed to both lobbying at the local and state level in order to make sure that students receive the funding that they need and the university receives the funding that they need. And we're definitely going to work with our Legislative Ambassadors program, because it's an amazing program, especially this year, to definitely ask for those fundings and lobby at the local and state level. In addition, I think it's important to bring politicians to this campus too. I was able to bring 7 legislators and senators to our event through the Women's Week conference. And growing up in a political family with politicians, I know that being able to show what we are doing on this campus is very important to politicians in order to really show them why they need to fund us.
Ms. Campbell.
The state legislature has slowly been decreasing in the level of funding that or it's remained stagnant over a large period of time, putting more financial stress on universities to provide an excellent education for students. With that being said, one of the direct areas that myself and Director of Governmental Affairs, Cassie Bond, along with our incredible team of legislative ambassadors, we have worked down having personal conversations, like Olson mentioned, where they take those personal stories and they're able to implement them as they have discussions about about this legislation. Number one, we would like to encourage them at the state legislature to continue the current tuition freeze that has been in effect since COVID to keep cost of college down for students. Number two, we want to continue to encourage students to utilize resources on campus like scholarships and grants, and finally, potentially establish a mentor program between legislators and students on campus to continue those personal story conversations.
Thank you for that. Reports and data published by the Board of Regents demonstrate that Regent universities are increasingly becoming more reliant on tuition revenues and less on state appropriations, as funding from state governments continue to decrease. This trend is causing student tuition to increase as the university must raise revenue to shore up budget shortfalls. Who do you believe should pay for the bulk of higher education in Iowa, and why? Starting with Ms. Olson.
Can you repeat the very last part of that question just one more time? Thank you.
Of course. Who do you believe should pay for the bulk of higher education in Iowa, and why?
I believe, again, lobbying at our local and state level is very important, because if we don't properly fund the regents, like last year the budget was decreased by $8 million, the university will raise in tuition. So it's very important that we continue lobbying at that local and state level in order to ensure that. And again, being able to have transparency between legislative ambassadors and then also student government in general, and that mentorship program, much as Kimball recommended too, is very important, because it's important to keep a steady conversation between our state legislators, senators, and so on.
Ms. Campbell?
We're here at an educational institution because we are investing in our future as students. To pay an upfront cost, but then receive benefit down the road is something that willingly we are here to take. So understanding that this is an investment in our future, I think that a lot of us would gladly understand that we are bearing some of that financial burden, because down the road it's going to pay off and we're going to go on and impact our communities in a tremendous way. A couple tangible items. Number one, continuing to connect students on campus to scholarship and grant opportunities is going to be critical. There are incredible resources, whether that be the Office of Student Financial Success for students to engage and increase their financial literacy. But I want to bring light to a program we spent time on the past year with what is an income share program. That's something that we worked on that would be an alternative to private loans for students to complement some of the ways that they can fund their educational experience.
The Iowa legislature recently introduced House File 49 and Senate File 41. These files would prohibit tenure from Iowa's 3 state universities. A tenured post is an indefinite academic appointment that can be terminated only for cause or under extraordinary circumstances, such as financial emergencies or program discontinuation. Tenure is a means of defending the principle of academic freedom, which holds that it is beneficial for society in the long run if scholars are free to hold and examine a variety of views. The Board of Regents also has stated that eliminating tenure would make Iowa's universities undesirable for talented faculty and diminish the state's educational reputation. What is your stance on the elimination of tenure at Iowa's state universities? Ms. Campbell.
A great mentor and friend in my life is a professor, and we had conversations recently about this, about something that you touched on, how the removal of tenure at higher education institutions, a round circle goal is that we want to bring the best instructors to promote the best student engaged experience on campus. And to back up a little bit, if we remove tenure, that makes Iowa State potentially a less desirable institution for those professors to consider as a first option as they might come considered as a faculty position here. We want people to be so incredibly excited about and passionate about teaching, and I think that is a priority in the classroom. From a student-focused lens, if we were to remove tenure and faculty positions at Iowa State were to become less desirable, we wouldn't want that to turn to an additional cost to the students with an increase in tuition, of making their experience less affordable.
Ms. Olson.
Yes, so for 3 consecutive legislative sessions, lawmakers have been introducing a bill in order to get rid of tenure on within campuses such as Iowa State, University of Iowa, and so on. So the Board of Regents has come out against this, and it's pretty evident to Iowa State students and also legislative ambassadors and individuals that are working on this project that this is not something that we want for our Iowa State campus. We need to continue being competitive. We need to continue bringing in the best individuals into our campus and university in order to make sure that students have the best education. So it's very important to me that we do not get rid of tenure within our university, and under Mariana Gonzalez and I, we plan to advocate in order to keep that, because it's in the best interest of the students' education and also for our university as a whole.
As a follow-up, so what will you do to lobby legislators to support your administration's stance on this issue, Ms. Olson?
Again, I think this is also coming from putting on events that bring a positive light to Iowa State University, being able to put on conferences, being able to put on events. We need to do these sort of things for also showcasing all of our amazing tenured professors here at Iowa State University. You don't actually know what professors are doing until you actually see how they're impacting students. So it's being able to lobby, but also show them what an amazing campus we have here and how educated our students here on campus, because that's what will really make the difference between them seeing a few students at the Capitol to seeing a whole entire university and how they are affected.
Ms. Campbell.
With a student-focused lens, we want to continue to move forward with an emphasis on what we're doing and the priorities that we're shedding light on at a state legislative level is with a student focus. With that being said, we have been down at the Capitol for the past 2 weeks lobbying on student issues, college affordability being one of them. And going back to some of those personal stories, connecting students and legislative ambassadors that we are traveling with members that represent them and their constituencies is incredibly important. So putting a name to a face and providing those personal stories from experience at Iowa State, whether that be their interactions with faculty, as our administration would come through, Megan has an extensive background in some of those government relations, and I think that would be a very strong approach as we continue to have these conversations with members of this legislature.
Thank you for that. We are now going to move into campaign-specific questions. Again, you're going to have 60 seconds to answer each of these. First, to Ms. Olson, your campaign plans to expand the Open Education Resources Program. This program has been around for a few years, and previous administrations have pledged to expand the program. Why has the program not taken off, and what does your administration plan to do differently than your predecessors?
Open educational resources are vital to students in order to ensure that they are able to afford college. It's looking at the ways that you can change in-person textbooks to online opportunities or just cheaper ways for students to keep that money in their pockets. Under our administration, I'm very confident that we will raise that level of OER trailblazers from 35 to beyond that. We are planning to do this because Mariana and I are both, we get things done. That's kind of what we're about. And so throughout my role as Senior Director of Communications, I've been able to put on conferences, I've been able to release campus climate surveys, I've been able to fulfill the responsibilities of my role, initially raise our social media following by 30%, so I know that I will be able to get that done while also working with the directors of affordability and so on in order to make sure that this is something that we address and improve within Trailblazers at Iowa State University.
Ms. Campbell, if you would like to respond, you have 45 seconds.
During the past year, I have spent my time working alongside Director of Academic Affairs, Chris Paulson, on the Open and Affordable Education Committee, where they are doing some phenomenal work for students there. One additional area that we can continue to encourage professors is having them apply for Miller mini grants. This is an ability for them to supplement their experiences as a professional staff member and bring that forward so they're able to continue to the establishment of these open educational resources going forward.
Okay, question for Ms. Campbell. Your campaign website lists several campaign platform points, but does not elaborate or articulate how you plan to accomplish those goals. Do you have any more specific plans to achieve your goals, and how will the public be able to review your plans prior to voting?
Absolutely. I am incredibly happy to share with you that right now, if you actually go to our website, and for those of you tuning in, you're able to take a look, and that extensive version of the platform is up online right now. So for anyone that would like to expand that conversation beyond what's happening here tonight, we are more than happy to sit down and have a conversation about that with you. So I would also add, Megan and I are big proponents that we do not have all of the answers. We are not running on the stance that we are experts in all areas of campus and have all the answers. With that being said, these platform initiatives are merely suggestions that we think could truly drive positive change across campus and are incredibly open to discussion about these. If you have suggestions, if you want to join that drive for change and join us on some of these initiatives, we are so happy and welcome you, and you will have a seat at that table when we make these have these discussions. So please take a look at our website and also connect with us beyond this.
Thank you for that. Ms. Olson, your campaign plans to have bi-weekly meetings with multicultural groups on campus and a diversity liaison. What specific action will these initiatives accomplish?
Yeah, so when we were putting these different platform points together and we came up with biweekly meetings, it might be something by first glance, oh, biweekly meetings, okay, that's cool, that's awesome, but it's important because that hasn't been done before. It's very important that we consistently meet with our multicultural student groups, and this is our way, Mariana's and my way, in order to make sure that we stick to that goal throughout the whole entire semester, and we will stick to that goal because we've already done it. We've already been meeting with all of these groups and organizations. In addition, a diversity liaison is very important in situations in which Mariana and I do not understand the student perspective on certain issues. So it's very important to us that we have all voices heard and that everyone has a seat at the table.
Ms. Campbell, your campaign proposes to fund grant opportunities for student organization membership dues. However, student government's current priorities and criteria explicitly prohibit the funding of membership dues. How will you gain the approval of the Senate in order to make amendments to the current funding regulations?
Thanks for the question. After some conversations with members of our campaign team and also members within the finance sector of student government, there's a couple ways to go about this. Number one, at a broad lens, I'm continuing to assess how funds are being distributed and understanding if that's where we want to spend that money. It will be a continued ongoing process throughout. Secondly, we want to look for the inefficiencies elsewhere and also understand how we can reallocate funds potentially. One fund I'll draw our attention to is the Excellence Fund, which is used at the discretion of the President and Vice President for specific initiatives that, as we seek to drive and establish a vision, potentially might impact current projects going on. So there might be a couple areas that we could pull funds from, but again, this is without reducing any, increasing any financial burden on students, and just more of a maximizing what we have, efficiently allocating dollars.
Thank you for that. Ms. Olson, last one. Your campaign plans to expand composting on campus. How do you plan to work with administrators to accomplish this, and why is this a priority of your campaign?
Composting already happens in some of our dining halls within the university, but we want to expand that. If anyone has noticed within the hub at Iowa State University, there are compostable Tupperware, but there's nowhere to compost that. We need to make sure that we look at those practical ways of going about our dining centers. After talking to the Director of Sustainability, Jennifer Seth, she said that this is a feasible way of going about composting on campus, as other dining centers are not necessarily equipped in order to have those composting areas quite yet. So she thought that the best area in order to combat this issue is at the hub, especially where there's already compostable containers. And so I plan to work with Mary Rankin and other administrators within ISU Dining in order to make sure that this is possible for students.
Ms. Campbell, your campaign proposes to create an elective class to achieve credit for volunteering. How do you plan to accomplish this, and how would you convince the administration and faculty to create this course?
There are many ways that students volunteer to impact our surrounding community at not only a local, a state, and Midwestern level, as well as a global community. Going forward, there are a large number of students on campus that pursue graduate programs or pursue programs where they are currently needing volunteer hours. We want to continue and also being mindful that there are programs that might potentially be an internship opportunity or unpaid internship for students within a program of study to go out and help impact a business in that space. But we want to provide a volunteer opportunity for students to potentially go forward and impact that community down the road.
Ms. Olson, you have 45 seconds to respond.
I just had a quick question. I was wondering if students that are going to partake in this program, if they will be paying money as they would for a normal class, and then also if it will be directly correlated to their studies and their major.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yes, this would be something that would be within a departmental lens as a forethought, continuing to be open to suggestions on that, especially with the focus on we want this to be specific to that student's interests and what they're studying at a university. We want it to be a productive allocation of their time. And to your point about credits, it's really neat that Iowa State has the opportunity that beyond 12 credits, we're not paying any more tuition per credits. And so this would be an encouragement from those students to complement some of the credits that they're paying for to move forward and add those credits on beyond the 12 credits.
Thank you. All right, we will now be taking a short 5-minute break. When we come back, we will be asking questions submitted by the student body. So for anyone watching at home, please fill out the Google form. That is linked in the YouTube description. It's also on the Election Commission debate webpage. So yeah, submit those, and when we return, we'll be asking those questions. So these questions, some are directed to each of you individually, some are directed to both of you. So this is for both of you. And this person wants to know, as a student who is passionate about sustainability, I want to know what real sustainability initiatives that each of your campaigns have and how you plan to initiate them. Starting with Ms. Campbell.
Sustainability is an incredibly exciting topic and one that we've had many conversations about. I just would like to say, we have one of the most incredibly and passionate and inspiring directors of sustainability on our cabinet right now, and she has done some incredible work. While sustainability is not a overarching headline of our campaign, we'd like to bring light that sustainability is ingrained through a variety of platform initiatives. Two that I'm going to draw your attention to include, number one, increasing the number of a percentage of locally sourced foods in dining centers over a period of time. Number one, we want to keep growth and jobs in the local economy, support, maybe that's a collaboration with Iowa State's farms, reduce single-use plastic, and reduce carbon emissions by increasing that locally sourced food. Point number two is we want to establish a composting site on campus that helps encourage students off campus and in the Greek community to compost and makes it more accessible to do so in collaboration with the Ames Food Waste Diversion Program.
Ms. Olson, you have 45 seconds to respond.
After talking to the Director of Sustainability, just talking about locally sourced foods and also your on-campus composting site, and your recycling area, how do you think that you are going to implement locally sourced foods into operation over your next 10 years without bringing up the prices for students' meal plans?
Absolutely. College affordability is a high priority, and that's something that working to balance the two, not all sustainable practices maybe are necessarily the cheapest option, but as we move forward, continuing to balance the cost of these implementations, doing so over a long enough period of time that we're spreading that overhead cost, as well as continuing, hopefully working with lower transportation costs, reducing some of the costs there would be specifically related to the cost of those and keeping it down for students and not adding any additional financial burden. In addition to the composting site, that's something you can begin composting on your own. This is just another way to help do so and encourage it there.
Ms. Olson, could you answer the same question? What real sustainability initiatives do you have and how do you plan to initiate them?
When I was living in the residence centers, I thought it was very important to teach students how to properly recycle, because every single day I would see that there was constant food contamination. Students didn't know how to cut off one side of their pizza box and then throw the other side in recycling and the other in the trash. It's very important that we teach all of these things to our students right as we come in. I'm going to be setting up a meeting with the DOR and IRHA within the next week in order to implement these house trainings for recycling. In addition, we're also going to create a campus sustainability review walk in order to see what areas on campus we can reduce our carbon footprint on. In addition to that, we'll also work with the recycling events coordinator to implement DIS trainings in order to make sure that recycling initiatives are brought up to students, and also expanding composting on campus within the hub, like I mentioned earlier.
Ms. Campbell, you have 45 seconds if you'd like to respond.
I would enjoy maybe having an expansion of the idea on the campus sustainability walk that you're proposing. Currently, our campaign manager sits on the sustainability committee and has shared that this is being done currently by students on an ongoing basis, and also it is done by facilities planning and management, and maybe just a further elaboration of how that would be differentiated from what you're proposing.
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So currently, student government has a campus accessibility review walk, and in order to constantly raise awareness to these sort of things within student government has to put on student government funded student government related review walks. So I believe that putting this on as student government in a whole will also raise awareness and get student government individuals involved, while also collaborating on the current sustainability review walks that are happening around campus.
Thanks.
Thank you for that. This one's to you, Ms. Campbell. Why did your campaign just recently add diversity and inclusion to your platform this week? Why has that not been emphasized throughout your campaign?
Thank you for the question. This was not a fully unaddressed issue on our campaign prior to these events. We are really excited to share with you tonight some elaborations that have come not only from a continuation of the platform, but also input from a variety of members around campus in terms of some of those campaign points. With that being said, rolling out these campaign points, we wanted to bring light to them within the debate to help understand how we can drive positive change in these areas.
Ms. Olson?
You said that diversity and inclusion wasn't a main point on your platform points originally. Why did you not have this as a strict emphasis right off the bat?
Diversity and inclusion is ingrained, and as we continue to apply the principles of community as cyclones, we want to continue to support and foster a strong sense of community. Two specific initiatives addressing this, encouraging learning communities, that interaction that students have initially as they come to campus, as well as offering a diversity, equity, and inclusion certificate that would be an immersive experience optional for students to join in to understand and enhance their understanding of implicit bias, as well as expand their understanding of the students that we all can collaborate with on a consistent basis.
Ms. Olson, a lot of your platform points involve expanding current programs. What new ideas are you bringing to campus?
The new ideas that we're currently bringing to campus is the Campus Sustainability Review Walk, biweekly meetings and having a diversity liaison, expanding gender-neutral bathrooms, expanding composting, expanding OERs are all things that we can do under our platform because we are looking at feasible things that we can get done under our platform. We don't want to make broad promises to the students that won't happen. We want to make sure that we continue the work that has been done by our awesome cabinet this year in order to make sure that these initiatives follow through. Many different individuals within cabinet either have stepped down for positions or are not able to finish their projects by the end of the year because they are large projects. So making sure that we continue to work with these individuals in order to continue these projects is really important while also initiating new projects.
Yeah, Ms. Campbell.
Maybe going back to some of the original thought there, some of the programs listed are maybe a continuation of current programs. Are you looking to apply new energy, or maybe what are some of the differentiations within your platform?
The differentiations in our platform is basically looking at the small ways to make a big impact on campus. I think overall we are looking at these large goals which consist on our campus, and we're not looking at the ways that we can really reinvent the wheel and try to get new students that are coming in. For example, our IRHA house trainings are very important to students right now because it's not an online training. It's not like Alcohol EDU. It's not like our training that's going to be coming out in the fall for diversity and inclusion. It's hands-on experiences with the students, and this is vital because over 90% of students within first-year students that are coming into the residence come into the residence hall at Iowa State University. So it's important to look at the small ways that we can make a large change on campus.
Thank you for that. Ms. Campbell, this is a question to you. Why weren't you or your partner, Ms. Decker, in attendance at the Senate meeting last Wednesday?
We were during the past couple weeks, we've been on the campaign trail meeting with a very exciting amount of students throughout the past couple weeks. This has been a continuation of conversations we've had during the past few months and serving on student government, working in that capacity to continue understand and hear perspectives there. We weren't in attendance at the Senate meeting due to meeting with students on campus to understand and lift up their voices, but it was something we sat down, not only the two of us together, but our Senate team, our campaign team as a whole, and watched it in full detail afterwards, rewound moments during it, and really tried to absorb the entirety of the event. That was a chance. That Wednesday night was a time for us to listen, and as we moved on beyond that, that was when we sought expertise from mentors the next day after and in the following days.
Yeah, Ms. Olson?
So I also had campaign meetings that day too, and so did Mariana, and we were both able to be in attendance because it is something that is very important for students right now. So do you think that watching on YouTube after the fact is enough in order to address students' issues and hear about their points that they were making at the meeting and after?
That's a great point. I do think that given some of the pandemic virtual experiences that we've seen over the past year, I would say that a virtual experience is no replacement for an in-person one. And that was why that Megan and I were incredibly sorry to miss the event. We did have events that lined up time for time there. And with that being said, neither of us have a requirement to be there, but I have been in attendance at Senate meetings out of curiosity and in ways I can support the Senate for the duration of my term as Director of Affordability over the past year, because it is so critically important that we are interconnected as a student government body and we work together.
This question is directed to both campaigns. Will you be in favor of mandating that students receive the vaccine for COVID-19 to attend the university? Ms. Olson.
I believe that campus safety is one of the most important things that we can focus on right now, because it is very important that all students feel safe. I put on a COVID-19 campus climate survey with some members on cabinet recently, and a lot of students said that they are either working on the front lines, individuals in their family are working on the front lines, or that also individuals in their family have compromised immune systems. It is very important that we make sure to ensure that all students on campus are caring for one another and making sure that safety is is of utmost concern for cyclones on this campus. I personally got my COVID shot. I got the second round through the rec center. I'm super excited about it, but now I am able to be more confident that I won't be able to possibly put a safety concern on a fellow cyclone.
Ms. Campbell.
Community health is an incredibly important part of not only our cyclone experience, but at a state and national level. Right now, we are trying to balance bringing students back for an in-person experience that is incredibly valuable, while at the same time helping to promote community health for the students, the faculty, the staff, and also the employers that come to our campuses to recruit students. That is why we're here. We're here to obtain a degree that will ultimately go out and help us impact the communities that we choose to live in beyond school. Right now, our campaign supports and directly in our platform under community, backing the equitable and accessible distribution of COVID-19 vaccines to students on campus, because this is a vital step and as we move forward to focus on community health down the road.
Thank you for that. This was a question directed at both campaigns here, starting with Ms. Olson. In your opinion, how severe is the issue of racism on Iowa State's campus? Do you believe this is an issue that is especially prevalent at Iowa State compared to other schools?
I think that this issue is very prevalent on our campus. It is seen over and over and over every single year that students are coming to student government expressing their concerns from student government members, from actions that student government is making, and that's not even considering anything that happens on or off campus. I've listened to many stories of many students that have gone through incidents like this, and it saddens me to know that some students experience this at school and then they go home and experience it more. We need to make sure that this is a #1 priority, and that's why our platform was the only platform to have diversity and inclusion as our main point right off the bat.
Ms. Campbell?
Unfortunately, racism is something that we see extremely common take place on our campus, and it is a zero tolerance policy for that. I've been extremely happy to see our administration implore that zero tolerance policy, and we want to continue as those events come up in the future, work not only to implement actionable items now that we can foster a strong sense of community today to prevent those events from happening, but work to, when those events do happen, unfortunately, a zero tolerance policy for them taking place. And we know this is a painful issue for many students, and it impacts the lives of many students. As we go forward, this is something that we seek to directly address head on and with a full confrontation that this is not accepted within the Iowa State community, and it is absolutely not representative of any beliefs that we share and represent under the principles of community at Iowa State.
This is to both candidates. If you had to boil it down to just one thing, what will your absolute #1 priority be if you're elected, Ms. Olson?
I believe that the #1 thing that we're going to focus on, and this is all, obviously there's so many important platform points, there's so many important initiatives, but I think in this current campus climate and something that Mariana and I are very, very confident about is diversity and inclusion, and that is to support the Divine Nine plot. It is very important to fund this plot. There's about $40,000 left since IFC has funded, recently considered to fund it, and it's very important to set a strong precedent on campus of supporting supporting not only our Pan-Hellenic community, but also our marginalized groups on campus, because it will set that precedent that we do care about these students because they feel like they're not being cared about right now. And if we support that right off the bat in our administration, I think it will set us on the right foot in order to continue talking to students all across campus.
Ms. Campbell.
As we move beyond the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, a critically important issue that I think has risen to a large point here is focusing on student re-engagement following the pandemic in an environment that they feel valued, respected, and that their ideas are heard and action is taken on them. A few tangible items from our platform include offering a grant opportunities for students to apply that towards some of their membership dues to remove some of the financial barriers to being involved on campus. We also want to work on decreasing, with the decreasing international student population here at Iowa State. We want to continue to support non-traditional students across campus in all walks of life, whether that be students coming to get their degree if they have children, if they're coming from overseas. We want to support them and meet them where they're at and help them move forward with the resources and energy that they need to feel successful at Iowa State and beyond college here.
Ms. Olson, you'd like to respond?
You mentioned international students and some different students that are affected on campus. Have you been able to meet with any individuals on campus personally before running for this campaign in order to learn about their needs on this campus?
Absolutely. That has been a priority. And I think that moving forward with conversations, these students interact in all areas across our campus. A couple people that we've had the chance to meet with at an administration level and starting there and also working with students. We met with Dr. Reginald Stewart not too long ago. He had some great vision for what student government might look like as we bring students in after a newly elected term and a newly elected year. We've met with recently the International Student Council, as well as going back to students. We've been part of some of the diversity inclusion roundtables to increase understanding of that area, and also met with students across the entire university in that sense.
Thank you for that. Another question directed at both you guys. If you were student body president last week, how would you have handled the situation that occurred with the Women's Week panelist? Ms. Olson?
I am confident that when I am your student body president, that I will never be in a situation like this, because I plan to surround myself by individuals that can properly educate me on every move that I can make regarding diversity and inclusion. Throughout my time as Senior Director of Communications, I've been able to meet with Reginald Stewart. I've been able to meet with the International Student Council. I've been able to meet with BSA. I've been able to meet with all of these multicultural student groups, because I noticed that we didn't have a chain of communication as I entered this role of Senior Director of Communications, and that has educated me profoundly to the point where I am right now. But there is way more to go, and that's existent for all students on campus. We need to continue educating ourselves, and the only way that we can do that is by surrounding ourselves with individuals that can constantly educate us. So if I were in that position, I would make sure that I would make the right decision, like I was advising to the student body president and vice president, along with the diversity and inclusion and director of outreach.
Thank you. Ms. Campbell?
I mentioned last week, following those events, Megan and I reached out to mentors who have more experience and expertise in these areas than us. We do not have all of the answers to these situations, but that's why we would truly seek to surround ourselves with people that come from all walks of life and have very unique perspectives, people that agree with us, people that disagree with us. Everyone is welcome at our table, and you will never be criticized for disagreeing with us. With that being said, as we listen louder than we speak, bringing in perspective from those groups that we've met with, as well as people, whether that be on cabinet, we want to truly not only listen to what they're saying and take into their advice, but also can fully implement what they're saying and fully ingrain that in the conversations.
Ms. Olson?
In the last debate, it was brought up a lot between the inclusion of colleges in general, but I think it kind of missed the mark of diversity and inclusion rather than inclusion within the colleges. Have you changed your viewpoint on inclusion in that sort of sense, since that question specifically addressed diversity and inclusion?
Do you mean, I guess I'm trying to say, do you mean like diversity across the colleges, like connecting students from different colleges together more?
Yes, so the question that was asked was regarding how to provide a more inclusive environment as it related to diversity and inclusion. And the question and the answer that was brought up was more about within the colleges itself, but not focusing on a strong emphasis of diversity.
There are some incredibly strong initiatives that span university-wide, and I think what's so unique is the different colleges that we have across campus have programs because there's so many unique similarities and unique differences within that group of students. At a university level, a couple programs I want to bring light to. We have an allyship program that creates safe zones on campus for professors and students for members in the LGBTQIA+ community, continuing to help promote and support those groups as well as maybe establish potentially an ally database there would be one of the ways that we can continue to expand across, and that was just one of many examples that we can reach across the lines of colleges and continue to seek and gain experiences beyond. That was also one of the reasons I joined student government, was I was heavily involved.
Thank you. This is to both candidates. For students that don't know you, can you please describe the involvement you've had within student government and why your experience makes you the candidate that students should vote for? Ms. Campbell.
I talked during my opening statement about how I have had an exciting opportunity. This is a first-year role. I'm serving as our Director of Affordability on Cabinet, and it's been an exciting opportunity to collaborate with many student groups and offices across campus, as well as down at the state legislature. One of the groups I have been incredibly impressed by, and I'm so excited to get the opportunity to work with, is our Legislative Ambassadors group. Each of the projects focused there has really produced tangible items that have impacted change for students on campus, whether that be safety and sexual assault, college affordability, or mental health accessibility across state lines, which is one of the platform items that we hope to bring positive change in. I've had the chance over the past year to work on extremely tangible initiatives, such as an income share pilot program that we're still considering what that might look like at some point down the road, as well as working with open educational resources along the way and other initiatives there.
Thank you. So a few projects I've worked on this year is putting on a Women's Week conference, raising access donations, over 150 with the Pan-Hellenic community. I've been able to put on a campus climate survey. I've worked with local and state politicians in order for them to come to our campus with the Women's Week conference. I've worked on diversity and inclusion one-pagers with our senators. I've been able to work on tabling within our student government every single month, at least once a week. And then I've also been able to raise our following by 30%. I've been able to work with health and wellness campaigns. I've been able to work with lots of different areas on campus, almost under every single cabinet position. So all I can say too is that we've completed every single one of those projects that has been brought up to PR committee. So it's very important to me that we set goals and we get them done.
Thank you for that. Follow up on the Women's Week conference. Your campaign failed to release a statement in regards to the tweets made by one of the panelists last week. Why is that?
Actually, we did release a statement. So both Mariana and I thought it was important that since we have two different perspectives on the issue and two different different views on the situation, that we would release a statement on our own personal social media accounts to make sure that it's not tied to our campaign, but that it's tied to us as individuals and how we can properly portray the message that we're trying to get across. For me, my experiences within this situation was purely just from the point of being involved in the Women's Week conference, but Mariana put on a beautiful speech at Senate on Wednesday, and she was able to talk about the experiences she's had on campus. We didn't release this on our social media account, but we directed everyone to our own personal accounts in order to make sure that all students can hear both sides of the story.
This is to both candidates. Will you be involved in student government if you're not elected? Ms. Campbell?
Absolutely. I truly believe in the change and the positive impact that student government has on students across all reaches of campus, even students that might not fully recognize the impact that student government has the opportunity to impact them by. One of the things that we would hope to do if elected would be to open up the idea of student government to those who might not typically get involved. And that's something, as someone who came, I was new to student government a year ago, I have seen the incredible impact it has on students and would love to continue to be involved in any capacity following this.
Yes, so I have been involved in student government ever since I was a little girl. I used to go up to my school administrators and be like, hey, can you please sign a petition in order to keep flip-flops on our campus? Ever since I was little, I've been involved in student government, and I will continue that for the rest of my life. But I also think it's important that if I am not put into this position, that I will also reach out to outside groups also. As I mentioned, a list of things that I've been involved in throughout my time on campus, I think that even has more room to grow and expand if I'm not in the position of president next year, because it's very important to constantly learn more about our campus and really associate yourself with everything that is happening on this wonderful Cyclone campus.
Thank you for that. Next question, directed at both you guys. The term diversity and inclusion has been used frequently tonight. What do those terms mean to you when you say diversity and inclusion is a priority? What does that mean specifically? Ms. Campbell.
To me, diversity means a wide array of perspectives and backgrounds and beliefs, whether that's be the color of our skin, our socioeconomic background, the invisible and visible identities that we have. When we walk into a room, more often than not, we don't know as much about a person as we think. We might make inferences, but truly understanding that diversity comes from all walks of life. We could look exactly alike, we could talk exactly alike, but our viewpoints may be extremely different. Encouraging an environment where people feel included, then to take that on to the next step, is a place where we want people to be because they want to be here. We want people to feel as if they not only are accepted and respected in this space, but that people are so excited to have them here because of who they are as individuals and because of what they bring to the table, because we can learn an incredible amount from so many people that are different from ourselves. And I think that's what's so wonderful about Iowa State University.
Ms. Olson?
I think maybe where this question is coming from is that diversity and inclusion is sometimes used as a buzzword, as a way to be like, okay, we're going to focus on this issue, but we're not actually going to focus on this issue. Under our campaign, it's very important to us that we do focus on this issue. We have multiple points in which we're wanting to initiate, but also way more, because you cannot put diversity and inclusion as a buzzword. You can't put it in a box, because there's so many students on this campus that are affected by the things that are occurring every single day. And if we don't properly address these things, then we will never be able to be the most inclusive campus that we can be. And that's what Mariana and I will both strive for as your student body president and vice president.
Ms. Olson, this student has a question for you. You have mentioned that you are an advocate for students' First Amendment rights. Does that right to free speech extend to unpopular speech, such as fear-mongering and threats of violence?
Yes, so under the First Amendment, there's obviously certain restrictions regarding if it incites violence and different things in that area. So it's making sure that everyone knows their First Amendment rights. But for me, I think it's very important for all students on campus to feel safe. And that's the tricky part of the First Amendment. But that is why we have to also enforce our First Amendment rights for all students, while also noticing that these rights hurt people. And that's why we have to put on programs that involve diversity and inclusion in order to make sure that all students are aware that things that people say do hurt people, and if you're not properly educated, then it makes a really bad impact on students. And that's why we're going to implement IRHA house trainings and work with the International Student Council in order to make sure that we can have cultural immersion programs in order to bring multicultural food, music, just really get students associated with thoughts and beliefs that are other than their own, so then we can have a mutual respect for each other.
Thank you for that. This is a question directed at both candidates. How does your campaign plan to support the mask mandate and Cyclone's care on campus now that Governor Kim Reynolds has lifted these restrictions in Iowa? Ms. Campbell?
Going back to an overall community health, it is important that we meet people where they're at with, and we want to be inclusive of that community. Looking ahead to the fall semester and with the reopening of not only the state and the nation in a safe and a manner that still caters to health for all individuals, I do not see the masks going away in a soon manner, but at the same time, I think that getting back to that in-person experience is going to be a critical assessment of how we continue to go on down the road and impact not only student re-engagement, but student life experience here at Iowa State. So that mask might not go away for some time until we fully reach a level of community health that promotes that. But at the same time, I think following the Cyclones Care campaign on campus has been a great way for the Iowa State community to resume in-person experiences.
Ms. Olson?
Through my role as Senior Director of Communications, I've actually already been able to help the Cyclone Cares Act. At the beginning of the school year, we were able to release images and ideas for how students can make sure that they stay 6 feet away from each other and follow CDC guidelines and also the guidelines of the university. We continue to promote this as we go back to our new normal because, like I said, releasing a statement and being able to hear that so many students will be impacted if they become sick or if a family member becomes sick, it's very important to make sure that we take all the safety precautions we can, and that is by talking to Teelan Health Center, that's by talking to Mary Greeley, that's by talking to all of the amazing resources within the Ames community, and also making sure that we can adapt back to this normal life in order to make sure that all students' mental health assessments are looked at in order to make sure that students that are going from extreme isolation back into regular life are properly assisted during this time.
This question is to both candidates. There are many students that are involved in sororities and fraternities here at Iowa State. How important do you believe Iowa State's Greek life is on campus, and how will you support or choose to not support the many chapters on campus? Ms. Campbell.
Greek life at Iowa State, when we think about Iowa State traditions that we're all passionate about, whether we're current students, future generations of Cyclones tuning in, or even alum that have spent many years walking the halls of the buildings on campus, I think Greek life is ingrained in so many aspects. And although I am not a member of the Greek community myself, my running mate Megan Decker is, and I know that she's had wonderful experiences there. Number one, supporting all students as they move forward along their journey is incredibly important, and Greek students are part of that. So we're continuing to support them. I think the Greek community, being a separate entity away from some of the on-campus activities, we really want them, allow them to continually assess the situation and make decisions based on what is right, maybe for that specific chapter, or they're working with the Interfraternal Council or the Collegiate Panhellenic Council, but letting them make their decisions based on decisions that are most appropriate given the current information.
Ms. Olson.
Actually, my car is pretty prevalent of how committed I am to the Greek community right now. My car is full of Access Drive goods in order to give to Access for this week based off of our Women's Week event that we put on. We were able to raise over 150 goods for Access, and I work directly with Alpha Chi Omega, Alpha Delta Pi in order to make this possible. I think it's very important for us to work with our Greek community on campus because just like student government, sometimes it has a negative connotation. After talking to many sororities and fraternities on campus, they asked the same question, and we all came down to the very obvious thing that both student government and sorority fraternity community are very focused around philanthropy, and we need to make sure that we continue these initiatives. In addition, my running mate Mariana Gonzalez is also part of the sorority fraternity community. She was actually a CPC senator, so she has great understanding of how to go about working with the Greek community.
Thank you for that. Ms. Campbell, how will you mentor the next director of affordability, your current role in student government?
This has been an exciting thought that not only has it brought, even in the initial conversations about the implementation of this role, how cool is it that we get to focus on college affordability, something that impacts every single student that comes on campus. We are all meeting from very different walks of life to fund a viable education experience here, and getting to work with students on campus over the past year has been incredibly exciting. I cannot wait to mentor in a new person. One project that we're currently looking to take into the upcoming year is the implementation of cooking workshops for one on campus that have a focus on providing students potentially coming out of dining halls on campus where they have a meal plan and helping support them as they learn to cook on their own, not only helping from a sustainability perspective, reducing food waste, but also at the same time helping them save money by developing grocery lists and helping combat food insecurity on campus there. So I really look forward to those conversations and being a mentor to that next director of affordability.
This is to both candidates. This year, many members of student government resigned their roles because they had felt disrespected and because their voices were not heard. What will you do to help mitigate and reduce conflict that may arise in student government? Ms. Olson.
I believe that both Eliana Crabb, the Director of Outreach, and I have given a lot of opportunities for senators to be involved within student government. We've been able to put on different events. We've been able to put on different initiatives in order to bring senators together. But sometimes that's not always enough because obviously senators are still not feeling the passion that they do anymore for student government, or they're feeling disrespected. And it's very important to create an inclusive environment for all senators, and that's by ensuring that everyone is able to communicate with themselves outside of student government. I have made some of my best friends through this, and I've been able to learn so much and educate myself so much in this area, and I will definitely, as I continue throughout in this role in student government, continue to give that same warm welcome as all of those individuals did to me, because it's important, as I've been able to meet with many senatorial candidates over the last few days, to also initiate that into our new group of students that will be taking over these roles.
Ms. Campbell.
As we work to drive an extremely positive, welcoming, and inclusive culture within student government, it needs to be a place that people want to be. We mentioned that, and it alluded to it earlier, that Senate is, and maybe student government overall, is not at a place where we currently want to be down the road. And with that, continual, with members of student government and members from the student body, of emphasis on lifelong learning and understand how we can continue to bring in new ideas and new initiatives, which ultimately brings in new energy, is incredibly valuable and incredibly important. We mentioned earlier that we want to encourage involvement between student government members outside of professional meetings to establish those personal relationships. We also want to continue having check-ins throughout the year and understanding what our people, is this meeting expectations, where do they need help, and how can we support them moving forward, helping connect them to the right people and the resources to utilize and move forward with their goals.
Thank you. Final question to both candidates. What does your vision of an effective and efficient student government look like, and how will you work to create and maintain this vision of student government? Starting with Ms. Olson.
I think an effective student government starts off with an effective cabinet. I'll start off with that. An effective cabinet will look like the PR committee this year. The PR committee that I was able to be a part of this year has been wonderful. Actually, one of our PR committee members put on a whole food truck for everyone here in order to bring up the elections and the election commission in general. And so that is creating an atmosphere in which there's constant check-ins, but also the freedom in order to take on all of these different roles and all these different responsibilities, and really let students really seek all the things that they're passionate about. You can see that at the Senate level by also encouraging senators to be involved in PR committee and also any other committee within student government, and that's by putting on fun initiatives. But that's how we get students involved, and that's how we get senators involved, is by putting on fun initiatives and being able to create an inclusive community so we can all be strivers to get work done.
Thank you. Ms. Campbell.
Student government is really cool, and there are so many incredible groups and organizations on campus that are really cool. And as we move to and make student government a place that people want to be part of, I think it goes back to some of the foundational elements that whenever we want to inspire and encourage and excite people about being involved, we want to focus on building personal relationships overall. We want to bring people together, and we want to establish a culture of trust. And then once we've done that, we can move forward and get things done. As we seek to bring positive change, moving forward with student government in a culture that people, maybe use as a role model across campus for a strong way to accomplish items that we're looking at doing, impacting the students along the way, and set a model for leadership across campus. That's where we want to be, and I think that's where we're going.
Thank you. That wraps up our questions from the student body. We'll now move into closing statements. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to make a closing statement, starting with Ms. Campbell.
I want to begin by saying thank you to everyone tuning in and everyone in the audience for joining us for a discussion tonight focused on issues that impact all of us along our journeys at Iowa State University. We have seen incredible things happen on campus, and this is a time for not only refocus and reallocating where we spend our time and energy, but a time for celebrating how many wonderfully incredible initiatives that are taking place across the entirety of campus. I think as we move forward, we want to continue to send energy and resources into these areas. And doing so, Megan and I hoping to elevate Iowa State through fostering a strong sense of community, encouraging student success, and encouraging student financial success are incredibly important to us. We hope you join us in seeking to elevate Iowa State March 22nd and 23rd, and we would immensely appreciate your support. Thank you.
Ms. Olson?
I want to begin off with saying thank you to the Election Commission, thank you to the Iowa State Daily, thank you to everyone that is here helping with this event and also watching. But with that being said, I want to allot a little bit of this time to the students. The reason why Mariana and I are running is because of student stories, and so I want to give a few seconds for that. A student athlete came up to me on campus and said he was discriminated at in a restaurant in the Ames community. Another student was concerned for his brother that's coming to campus and making friends during COVID-19. Another student didn't want to join student government because it's too exhausting to express concerns to people she doesn't think cares. Another student told me she didn't receive the health services she needs. Give these students a voice. And the only way we can give these students a voice is by letting Mariana and I be your next student body president and vice president, because we are the most equipped with student stories and student ideas and student voices in order to make sure that all students on campus are represented. Thank you.
All right, this wraps up the end of the 2021 presidential debate. Thank you so much to both campaigns for attending tonight. Thank you to the members of the Election Commission and the Iowa State Daily, as well as the MU event staff that helped in preparation for this debate. For everyone watching right now, make sure to cast your vote in the 2021 student government elections. Voting days are next week, March 22nd and 23rd. All Iowa State students will receive an email on Election Day with a link to vote, so please be on the lookout for that email. Thank you so much again to everyone involved. Have a great night.